And at number 10, we unravel the case that still divides experts. A brutal family stabbing where the mother claimed an intruder struck, but evidence pointed toward a perfect, calculated performance. Stay tuned, because the controversy surrounding this case ensures that the question of her innocence will never truly die. A haunting open loop that forces us to ask, how could a mother stage the murder of her own children? Number 10. Darlie Routier, The Phantom Intruder's Lie. The date, June 6, 1996. The target, her two young sons, Devin, 6, and Damon, 5. The conspirator, Darlie Routier, the mother. The location, Rowlett, Texas, USA. The suburb of Rowlett, Texas, in the summer of 1996 was a place of high expectations and careful presentation. Darlie Routier and her husband Darren lived a life built on outward appearances of success, a large home, luxury cars, and a vibrant social presence that masked a suffocating reality of financial strain and mounting corporate debts. They were living the American dream, but it was mortgaged to the hilt and the pressure was immense. That calm shattered in the early hours of June 6th when a frantic 911 call cut through the quiet morning air at 2:31 a.m. The tape, later played countless times for juries and television audiences, captured Darlie Routier's hysterical voice. She screamed that an intruder had broken into her home and stabbed her two young sons while she lay injured herself on the living room floor. Her story was cinematic. She woke up to a masked man with dark, shoulder-length hair leaving the room, fleeing through the utility room and garage. The scene police encountered was one of savage, sudden violence. 5-year-old Damon and 6-year-old Devin, fatally stabbed with a large kitchen knife. Their mother, Darlie, was found bleeding from superficial wounds to her neck and right arm. The initial narrative, fueled by the immediate shock and the presence of a terrified mother, was established instantly. Darlie Routier, the victim, the survivor. The police's first priority was a wide-scale search for the phantom attacker who supposedly fled through the garage, slipping away unseen. This initial public narrative was heavily influenced by the negativity bias, the deep-seated human reluctance to believe a mother could be the perpetrator, defaulting instead to the terrifying scenario of a random home invasion. But the investigators, masters of detail, started collecting data points that refused to fit the narrative. The blood spatter. It was found mostly on the sofa and floor near Darlie's position, inconsistent with a struggle involving a furious, adrenaline-fueled intruder who had just brutally murdered two children and injured the mother. The crime scene details. The Routier house, especially the utility room and garage, showed no signs of a panicked escape. They noted the pristine condition of the mulch beds outside the cut window screen in the garage. No footprints, no disturbed earth. They saw the untouched layers of dust on the windowsills, implying no one had actually climbed through. An officer famously remarked that the garage was cleaner than his own kitchen. The central, devastating question emerged almost immediately. If an intruder had slashed her throat, why were her own wounds so shallow, so precise? Less than 2 millimeters from the vital carotid artery, suggesting not a lethal attack, but a calculated self-inflicted staging. The wounds were described by the prosecution as hesitation cuts, designed to look severe without being fatal. The ensuing investigation, detailed later in official court documents and scrutinized by crime journalists, pivoted on these minute forensic inconsistencies. The prosecution built their case on the devastating foundation that the crime scene was meticulously staged to look like a botched robbery by a stranger. They argued the motive was hidden in the family's collapsing finances. The life insurance policies on the boys were a desperate, albeit small, attempt to relieve the pressure of their failing high-spending lifestyle. The conflict for the jury was now irrevocably internal. Was Darlie a shattered victim of fate and crime, or the perpetrator of the ultimate betrayal against her own offspring, sacrificing them to save her lifestyle? Adding layers of complexity was the discovery of a bloody fingerprint on the interior windowsill, a print that did not belong to anyone in the family. This detail became the bedrock of the defense's argument. An intruder had to be there. Yet the overwhelming forensic and physical evidence, the undisturbed dust, the staged window screen, the direction of the blood drops, suggested the intruder's claim was a complete fabrication, or that the print was left at a different, non-related time. This case became a crucible for modern DNA testing, as defense teams fought for years to retest the fingerprint and a bloody sock, hoping to transform the ambiguous data into definitive proof of her innocence. The open loop of the unknown fingerprint remains the primary engine for continued public debate. Darlie Routier's trial questioned the primal bond between mother and child, focusing on financial desperation and fabricated self-defense. But our next case involves a betrayal that occurred not in the warm light of a Texas morning, but in the technological shadows of Silicon Valley. This story involves a man hailed as an innovator, whose quest for scientific breakthrough and financial stability led him to commit an unspeakable act against his own wife and child, using the very tools of his trade to cover his tracks. Next, we descend into the chilling final days of Vladimir Pokhilko, the Tetris case that blurs the line between genius and madness. Stay with us as we explore how financial ruin can turn a computer scientist into a murderer, and what shocking confession he left behind. Comment below and tell us, where are you watching this analysis from? Number 8. Vladimir Pokhilko, the Tetris creator's final equation. The date, September 21, 1998. The target, her wife, Elena Fedotova, 38, and their son, Peter, 12. The conspirator, Vladimir Pokhilko, the founder, engineer. The location, Palo Alto, California, USA. Vladimir Pokhilko was, by all accounts, a brilliant mind. A Soviet-Russian psychologist and entrepreneur, he was an academic who specialized in human-computer interaction, and he played a foundational role in the international development and marketing of Tetris, the globally addictive puzzle game. The game's success was his entry ticket to the West. In 1998, Pokhilko resided in Palo Alto, the perfect picture of technological ambition, running his own 3D software company, Annihilators, which he co-founded with Alexei Pajitnov, the creator of Tetris. This was the pinnacle of achievement, a celebrated engineer in the heart of the digital revolution. But behind the high walls of Silicon Valley success and the promise of future fortunes, the dream was collapsing. His company, Annihilators, was reportedly facing severe financial difficulties, overwhelming debt and cash flow issues. The intense, unrelenting pressure of the tech world, demanding constant innovation and profit, was suffocating the Pokhilko family. The discovery, made on September 21, 1998 by a friend who arrived for a visit, was the catastrophic culmination of this internal collapse. Pokhilko, his wife, Elena, a yoga instructor and a reflexologist, and their 12-year-old son, Peter, were found dead in their home. The scene was one of overwhelming violence. Pokhilko had apparently bludgeoned and stabbed his wife and son before taking his own life. The official ruling from the Palo Alto police and the FBI investigation was a swift, tragic murder-suicide. This immediately established the central conflict. Was this the desperate final act of a brilliant mind driven over the brink by business failure, or was there a darker, more complex narrative of betrayal and external involvement lurking beneath the surface of this tech pioneer? The sheer brutality of the attack against his wife and son using blunt force and a knife was profoundly inconsistent with the quiet, intellectual profile of Pokhilko. Yet, supporting the official narrative, investigators found a final note reportedly written by Pokhilko. This cryptic message, heavily analyzed by journalists and later detailed in the documentary The Tetris Murders, became the primary piece of evidence. It reportedly described a profound sense of despair and financial ruin, potentially framing the actions as an ultimate shared escape from overwhelming pressure. The note, often cited by authorities, served as the authority bias that closed the case quickly, suggesting a man who felt he had failed his family and himself. The investigation confirmed the extent of the financial strain on Annihilators. For Pokhilko, the massive blow to his professional identity and the shame of failure, coupled with the immediate threat of destitution, was the engine of his transformation. He went from acclaimed innovator to murderer in the chilling silence of his home, a private collapse hidden by the high walls of Silicon Valley success. But the details never quite settled right for everyone. Pokhilko was a psychologist. His understanding of human manipulation and behavior was profound. Could he have committed such a disorganized, rage-filled act? The crime scene offered few signs of a struggle that might be expected from such a violent, hands-on attack on an adult and a 12-year-old boy. Furthermore, the possibility of the note being written under duress or the involvement of outside parties linked to the financial troubles, a popular theory that suggested a mob hit disguised as a domestic tragedy, fueled claims that the initial investigation was too quick to rule out foul play. This suspicion remains a powerful curiosity loop. The idea that a genius was brought down not by his own hand, but by outside, unknown forces linked to the cut business of intellectual property. While the case was officially closed as a murder-suicide, the lingering questions about external pressures, the violent method, and the nature of the note ensured the narrative refused to die. The Palo Alto police, relying on the authority bias of the final note, closed the case. Yet the sheer tragedy remains a dark stain on the history of the optimistic tech industry. The Pokhilko case serves as a disturbing reminder that the intense psychological pressure of career failure and the shame of financial collapse can, in some cases, lead to utter annihilation. The promise of the digital future, symbolized by the endless blocks of Tetris, ended abruptly and brutally for the Pokhilko family in the heart of American innovation. What secret did Vladimir Pokhilko take with him that night that was more terrifying than poverty itself? Vladimir Pokhilko's collapse was rooted in financial desperation, a scientist's final tragic experiment. But not all family annihilation is motivated by bankruptcy. Sometimes the goal is to secure a literal empire built on generations of wealth. Our next case involves a sprawling English estate, a network of relatives, and a son who decided he would inherit everything sooner rather than later. Next, we investigate the infamous White House farm murders and the dark ambition of Jeremy Bamber. The question that drove him, greed, is as old as time, but his method was chillingly modern and shrouded in an elaborate lie. The fallout of this case exposed how easily we can be manipulated by those who seek to deflect blame onto the most vulnerable. If you think this is chilling, wait until you see the absolute lack of remorse demonstrated by the next Annihilator. Number 8. Jeremy Bamber, The Inheritance of Blood at White House Farm. The date? Night of August 6-7, 1985. The target? Adoptive parents Neville and June Bamber, adoptive sister Sheila Caffel, and Sheila's twin sons, Daniel and Nicholas, age 6. The conspirator? Jeremy Bamber. The location? White House Farm, Tollahunt Darcy, Essex, England. White House Farm, a secluded, prosperous property in the quiet English countryside of Essex, became the site of one of the most ruthless, calculated acts of familicide in British history. The Bamber family represented entrenched wealth, ownership of a sprawling caravan park, and a quiet life of farming, a life that 24-year-old Jeremy Bamber, the adopted son, felt he was entitled to inherit immediately. Bamber had a history of petty crime and an appetite for a lavish lifestyle his parents' allowance could not sustain. He desperately needed to access the millions tied up in the family estate. In a single brutal night, 5 members of the family were executed. Neville and June Bamber, the adoptive parents who controlled the inheritance; Sheila Caffel, the adoptive sister who suffered from schizophrenia; and her 2 young twin sons, Daniel and Nicholas, age 6. The sole surviving member of the immediate family, the one who called the police with a dramatic, urgent report, was Jeremy Bamber, who claimed to be at his nearby cottage. The initial investigation, guided by the scene, a rifle left near Sheila's body in a bedroom, and her documented history of mental illness, strongly favored the theory of a murder-suicide. The police, and initially the public, believed that Sheila, in a psychotic break, had killed her parents and sons before turning the weapon on herself. This theory was immediately embraced by many. exploiting the negativity bias surrounding mental health issues and the convenience of a ready-made culprit. For weeks, the police pursued this path, allowing Jeremy Bamber the perfect operational window to solidify his alibi and flaunt his newfound freedom and spending money. The central conflict in the Bamber case lay in his intricate staging and his seemingly convincing performance as the shocked relative. The prosecution later argued that his motive was pure, unadulterated greed, securing the substantial inheritance and the family assets. To sell the lie that Sheila was the killer, he fabricated a crucial detail: that his father, Neville, had called him in the dead of night to report that Sheila had gone berserk with the rifle. This call, he claimed, was the reason he alerted the police. This alleged phone call became the legal fulcrum of the entire case. The prosecution had to prove that Neville was too severely injured, having been shot in his bedroom, to make the call, and that the phone in the kitchen showed no sign of blood spatter consistent with the violent struggle that took place there. This authority bias against the defendant's word was built on painstaking forensic work. The weapon itself presented key physical evidence. The rifle was found with a silencer attached. The prosecution demonstrated two devastating points. First, the silencer would have explained why the sounds of multiple gunshots did not alert the neighbors, undermining the rampage theory. Second, and crucially, they argued the rifle, with the silencer attached, would have been too long for the relatively petite Sheila to have placed the barrel against her own throat and pulled the trigger, a fact that strongly suggested the scene was definitively staged by someone else. Furthermore, Sheila had been shot twice, an unlikely event for a suicide attempt. The true revelation, the point of transformation that finally broke the initial narrative, came only after Jeremy's ex-girlfriend, Julie Mugford, came forward. Mugford told police that Bamber had in fact confessed the entire plan to her before the murders took place. She described how he discussed hiring a hitman and later how he implicated himself in the actual execution. Mugford's testimony, combined with the forensic evidence proving the staging and the police realization that they had focused on the wrong target, sealed Bamber's fate. The spotlight swung entirely onto the man who had stood outside the farmhouse, orchestrating a 5-person massacre to claim an inheritance. In 1986, following a sensational trial, Jeremy Bamber was convicted of 5 counts of murder. He was sentenced to a whole life order, meaning he will never know parole. The fallout was the complete disintegration of the Bamber family legacy, and a harsh lesson in how easily we can be manipulated by those who seek to deflect blame onto the most vulnerable. If you think this is chilling, wait until you see the absolute lack of remorse demonstrated by the next Annihilator. Number 7. Christina Marie Riggs, the Silent Executioner. The date, November 4th, 1997. The target, her 2 children, Justin Dalton Thomas, 5, and Shelby Alexis Riggs, 2. The conspirator, Christina Marie Riggs, the mother. The location, Sherwood, Arkansas, USA. In the quiet suburbs of Sherwood, Christina Marie Riggs was a licensed practical nurse, LPN, a woman in a position of trust, both professionally and domestically. However, her life was one of profound personal distress, weighed down by a troubled childhood, deep-seated depression, and mounting marital friction. Her internal battle exploded into a final, fatal act against the only 2 people completely dependent on her: her son, Justin Dalton Thomas, age 5, and her toddler daughter, Shelby Alexis Riggs, age 2. On November 4, 1997, Riggs decided to end her life, but not before ensuring her children could not be left behind. This case is a direct confrontation with negativity bias applied to mental health. The community struggled to reconcile the image of a mother suffering from major depression with the perpetrator of calculated filicide. The method she employed was clinical, quiet, and designed to look like a medical tragedy. Riggs, utilizing her access as an LPN, had meticulously procured the tools of annihilation: the antidepressant Elavil from a pharmacy, and the potent injectable drugs potassium chloride and morphine from the hospital where she worked. The conflict was her own destructive psychological state versus the lives of her children. The evening began with her administering the sedative Elavil to the children so they would fall asleep. Then she moved to the fatal agents. She attempted to inject Justin with undiluted potassium chloride, a chemical used in lethal injections to stop the heart. But the injection caused Justin agonizing pain, not immediate death, waking him up and making him scream. This unexpected failure forced her hand to a more brutal, intimate method. She smothered Justin with a pillow. Then, seeing the horrifying pain the chemical caused, she decided not to inject Shelby and instead smothered the 2-year-old with a pillow as well. After the murders, Riggs attempted to end her own life with an overdose of Elavil and a self-injection of potassium chloride. She collapsed, but the potassium chloride did not properly enter her vein, instead burning a hole in her arm. The attempt failed, leaving her unconscious but alive. When she didn't show up for work the next day, her mother found the horrifying scene, the 2 children dead and Riggs critically ill. Riggs was immediately treated at the hospital and then arrested. The defense initially entered an insanity plea, attempting to lean on her documented history of major depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and her claim that she could not appreciate the wrongness of her action. Her attorneys attempted to use clinical diagnosis as an authority bias shield for insanity. However, prosecutors successfully argued that the methodical acquisition of 3 different agents, sedative, heart stopper, painkiller, spoke to a sinister level of premeditation and calculation. The shocking transformation in her response was shocking. After the jury found her guilty of capital murder in June 1998, she waived her right to further appeal, instructing her lawyers to cease all efforts. She stated calmly, "I'm going home to be with my babies," signaling her desire for state-sanctioned death over a life in prison. This shocking self-condemnation closed the typical judicial loop of appeal, accelerating her path to execution. On May 2, 2000, Christina Riggs was executed by lethal injection, becoming the first woman executed in Arkansas since 1845, and the youngest woman executed in the United States in the modern era. Her final statement was an apology for the pain caused, a final, desperate bid to reclaim the narrative of maternal love, even in death. The fallout was a painful local and national reminder that sometimes the person entrusted with the most sacred duty, the protection of the young, becomes their most lethal threat. The Riggs case remains a grim study in how deep-seated psychological pain, combined with unchecked access to lethal resources, can lead to the absolute, irreversible destruction of a family. Could the institutions that failed to treat her depression be held partially responsible for the catastrophic outcome? Christina Riggs' story ended in the execution chamber, a final, self-imposed sentence to escape her own demons. But sometimes, the destruction of the family is not an act of despair. It's a deliberate, calculated act of erasure carried out by a man who simply wanted to disappear. Our next case is one of the FBI's longest-running unsolved disappearances, involving a highly placed State Department diplomat who bludgeoned his entire family to death and vanished without a trace. A ghost created by a hammer. Next, we track the chilling journey of William Bradford Bishop Jr., the well-spoken man who traded his prestigious career for a life on the run after a brutal 5-person rampage. Number 6. William Bradford Bishop Jr., the Diplomat Who Vanished. The event marked the map. The date, March 1, 1976. The target, wife Annette, 37, mother Lobelia, 68, and 3 sons, William, 14, Brenton, 10, and Jeffrey, 5. The conspirator, William Bradford Bishop Jr., the father, diplomat. The location, Bethesda, Maryland. Murders. North Carolina, disposal. William Bradford Bishop Jr. was the embodiment of American professional achievement in the mid-1970s. A Yale graduate, a former Army counterintelligence officer, and a highly regarded U.S. State Department diplomat fluent in 5 languages: English, Italian, French, Spanish, and Serbian Croat. He projected an image of meticulous control, intellectual rigor, and absolute competence, a man whose entire life was structured by rules and decorum. But behind the facade of the perfect diplomatic life, Bishop was deeply unhappy. He suffered from insomnia, was under psychiatric care for depression, and was frustrated by a professional plateau. On March 1, 1976, a professional slight, being denied a desired foreign posting to be closer to his family, apparently detonated decades of suppressed rage. The subsequent actions were not a sudden, messy break, but a cold, calculated act of total familial annihilation. The conflict that erupted in the Bethesda home was swift and terrifyingly intimate. Police believe Bishop returned home and first killed his wife Annette, possibly during an argument, then his mother Lobelia as she returned from walking the family dog. Finally, he went upstairs and killed his 3 sleeping sons, William, 14, Brenton, 10, and Jeffrey, 5, while they lay defenseless in their beds. The murder weapon for all 5? A ball-peen hammer. The lack of noise, the intimacy of the weapon, and the targeting of sleeping children speaks to an absolute, unsparing capacity for violence. Bishop's subsequent actions demonstrated an almost preternatural capacity for evasion, a skill honed in his Army counterintelligence days. He loaded the 5 bodies into the family station wagon, a move suggesting incredible physical and emotional detachment, and drove hundreds of miles to a remote, densely wooded swamp near Columbia, North Carolina. There, he dug a shallow hole, piled the bodies, and set them ablaze with gasoline. This act of complete erasure was designed to delay identification and make the bodies disappear forever. He was observed the next day purchasing tennis shoes at a sporting goods store in Jacksonville, North Carolina. The abandoned station wagon was later found at an isolated camping ground in Elkman, Tennessee, in the Great Smoky Mountain Park, containing hiking gear, dog biscuits, a bloody blanket, and a shotgun, the tools of a man intending to disappear permanently into the wilderness. He had a week's head start before the police were alerted by a worried neighbor. He was believed to have taken his diplomat passport with him. This proficiency in evasion instantly turned the case into one of the FBI's most complex and enduring mysteries, utilizing the authority bias that assumes a man with counterintelligence training is uniquely equipped to evade detection. The official investigation spearheaded by the FBI ultimately designated Bishop one of its 10 most wanted fugitives in 2014, nearly 30 years after the crime. The transformation of the decorated diplomat into a ghost remains one of the Bureau's most enduring puzzles. The curiosity gap is immense. Where did he go? Did he use his language skills and passport to settle in a foreign country? Has he survived decades off the grid, or did he take his own life shortly after the murders? His case serves as a dark monument to the secrets held by those who serve in positions of high trust. The polished exterior, the diplomat, the linguist, the counterintelligence officer hid the capacity for unimaginable hammer-wielding violence against the very people he was supposed to cherish. His unsolved disappearance remains a painful open loop for the victim's surviving relatives, who are left only with the unsettling image of a man who literally burned his family away to start a new, solitary life. What is more terrifying, a killer caught or a killer who completely vanishes into the wind? William Bishop became a ghost, a cautionary tale about the dark side of disciplined intelligence. But sometimes, the destruction of the family is not about escape. It's about creating a horrific sanctuary, a place where the family lives in a state of perpetual suspended animation, hidden from the world by their own father. Our next subject didn't flee. He lived with the decomposing bodies of his wife and children for weeks, all while his financial world collapsed around him. Next, we detail the bizarre apocalyptic delusion that drove Anthony Todt to commit murder in the heart of Disney's utopian community. Stay with us, because the details found inside that home will shock you to your core. Number 5. Anthony Todt, The Apocalypse Pact in Celebration. The date, December 2019. Deaths, January 13, 2020. Discovery. The target, wife Megan, 42. Children Alec, 13, Tyler, 11, and Zoe, 4, plus the family dog Breezy. The conspirator, Anthony Todt, the physical therapist. The location, Celebration, Florida, USA. Celebration, Florida is an idyllic, master-planned community originally developed by the Disney Corporation, designed to embody suburban perfection, order, and family values. In this town built on fantasy and curated serenity, Anthony Todt orchestrated a very real nightmare. Todd and his wife Megan, a yoga instructor, owned a vacation home in Celebration, though they primarily lived and worked in Connecticut. In December 2019, while staying at the Florida home, Todd murdered his entire immediate family, his wife Megan, their 3 children, Alec, 13, Tyler, 11, and Zoe, 4, and their family dog Breezy. The critical detail that defines this case is Todd remained in the house with the badly decomposed bodies for weeks until authorities finally tracked him down. The bodies were so severely decomposed that police initially missed finding the youngest victim, Zoe. The initial conflict that preceded the murders was the financial reality Todd was desperately trying to escape. His Connecticut physical therapy clinics were under federal investigation for healthcare fraud. He was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, facing imminent federal charges and professional ruin. The perfect, carefully curated life he'd built in Celebration was exposed as a financial mirage built on fraudulent claims. This motive, erasing the evidence of his fraud by erasing his family, became the prosecution's central pillar. The final days of the Todt family were marked by a sickening intimacy. Todd allegedly drugged his family with Benadryl before stabbing them and smothering them to death. The discovery by authorities, who entered the home under an eviction warrant, mail had piled up and they were missing rent payments, was met with a pungent odor. Agents found Todd upstairs convulsing and shaking strangely, having consumed a large amount of Benadryl in a failed suicide attempt. The victims were found in their beds, having been dead for weeks, their bodies black as leather from decomposition. The true horror emerged from the staging. The chilling detail that focused the investigation was the presence of crucifixes gripped in the hands of the deceased children, suggesting a ritualistic delusional attempt by Todd to rationalize his actions as spiritual salvation. Todd initially maintained his innocence, but eventually confessed to the murders, claiming he and Megan had entered an apocalypse death pact and that he was saving his family from the apocalypse. This confession provided the necessary authority bias for the initial charges. However, Todt later recanted, claiming his wife killed the children by feeding them Benadryl pudding pie before stabbing herself. This constant, bizarre rewriting of the events kept the curiosity gap open. Was he a sociopathic liar? Or was he truly suffering from a delusion that allowed him to rationalize living among his dead family? In 2022, Anthony Todt was convicted of 4 counts of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, plus an additional year for the killing of the family dog, Breezy. The transformation in his case is how a man obsessed with maintaining a fraudulent image of perfection could devolve into a murderer who preferred to live with the decomposing bodies of his family than face the consequences of his financial ruin. The Celebration community, built on the promise of safe, orderly living, was forced to confront the reality that the deepest rot can fester even in the most perfectly planned suburbs, leading to a catastrophic end rooted in delusion and greed. What kind of monster could sleep next to the bodies of his own children for weeks? Anthony Todt's dark secret was exposed by a pile of overdue mail and a federal warrant. His story proves that financial ruin is a powerful, destructive force within the family structure. But sometimes the motivation isn't money or a delusional pact. It's a desperate final power play in the face of marital dissolution, the ultimate act of misogynistic rage. Our next subject had a history of abuse allegations that were dismissed once before, only to resurface with lethal force. Next, we look at the Utah shooting, where a man killed 7 family members, including 5 children, just weeks after his wife filed for divorce. How many red flags does the system need before a killer is stopped? Number 5. Michael Haight, The Divorce Countdown. The date, January 4, 2023. The target, wife Tasha, 40, mother-in-law Gail Earl, 78, and 5 children, Macy, 17, Briley, 12, twins Amon and Sienna, 7, and Gavin, 4. The conspirator, Michael Haight, the husband, father. The location, Enoch, Utah, USA. Enoch, Utah, a small, close-knit town with a strong community presence, was rocked by a tragedy of almost incomprehensible scale on January 4, 2023. 8 members of one family, 3 adults and 5 innocent children spanning ages 4 to 17, were found shot to death in their home. The perpetrator, identified by authorities, was Michael Haight, the 42-year-old insurance agent and patriarch who died by suicide after the massacre. This was a case where the warning signs were tragically visible, yet ultimately ignored by both the family and the system. The conflict driving this devastation was the imminent collapse of his marriage and Haight's need for absolute control. Just 2 weeks prior to the massacre, his wife Tasha Haight had filed for divorce. Her mother-in-law Gail Earl was reportedly staying with the family to help Tasha and the children through the difficult separation. This act of seeking freedom was interpreted by Haight as the ultimate loss of control, triggering his final destructive act. Investigators revealed that Michael Haight was not unknown to law enforcement. A 2020 domestic abuse investigation had been initiated by his eldest daughter, Macy, who reportedly told police that her father had choked her and that she was very afraid that he was going to kill her. At the time, Tasha reportedly convinced officers not to press charges, minimizing the abuse and suggesting Michael would take the divorce filing as a wake-up call. The police officer who handled the call later stated there was no indication that there would be any violent behavior. This institutional failure, the authority bias toward believing the situation was under control, is the critical open loop that haunts this case. Could the children have been saved if the 2020 complaint had been pursued? Haight's actions leading up to the massacre suggested a man determined to exert final control over his family's narrative and their literal existence. Days before the shooting, he allegedly removed all the family's guns from the home, a move Tasha may have interpreted as a sign of de-escalation, but which in fact created a deadly window of false security before he introduced his own weapon. The massacre itself was systematic. Tasha, her mother, Gail, and the 5 children, Macy, 17, Briley, 12, twins Amon and Sienna, 7, and Gavin, 4, were all killed by gunfire. The ages spanned a generation, from a toddler to a near adult, ensuring the complete erasure of the family line. This was not just a murder, it was a family-side of retribution against a wife who dared to seek liberation, a final, lethal act of patriarchal rage. The aftermath saw the tight-knit community grappling with the profound horror. The family was active in their faith, well known in the local schools, and outwardly successful.
the immediate transformation was brutal. The trusted insurance agent and father became the perpetrator of a mass murder. This case stands as a stark testament to the negativity bias that shields quiet suburban fathers from the ultimate suspicion until the undeniable evidence of the crime forces a brutal shift in public perception. The failure of the system and the family unit to heed the clear warnings from the teenage daughter, Macy, remains the most devastating open loop. The community was left asking, what does it say about our society when a teenage girl's fear of death is deemed less important than preserving the outward peace of a strained marriage? Michael Haight's final act was an act of absolute destructive control over a dissolving family structure. But sometimes the control exerted isn't just physical or financial, it's a decades-long psychological prison built in a military environment where the perpetrator is trained to uphold the law, but instead breaks it in the most sacred place. Our next subject was a decorated Green Beret doctor who stabbed his pregnant wife and 2 daughters, then tried to frame radical hippies for the crime. Next, we dissect the complex, enduring mystery of Jeffrey MacDonald. The legal battle that followed has lasted over 50 years. Did the system get the right man, or is the true killer still out there? Number 3. Jeffrey MacDonald, the Hippie Frame-Up. The date, February 17, 1970. The target, pregnant wife Colette, 26, and daughters Kimberly, 5, and Kristen, 2. The conspirator, Jeffrey MacDonald, the Army doctor. The location, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, USA. The sterile and regimented world of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, an active U.S. Army base, became the stage for a crime that captivated and confused the nation for decades. Captain Jeffrey MacDonald, an ambitious Army Green Beret doctor, reported an attack by drug-crazed intruders who brutally murdered his pregnant wife Colette and their 2 young daughters Kimberly, 5, and Kristen, 2, in the pre-dawn hours of February 17, 1970. The scene was instantly sensationalized by the media, playing on the cultural conflict between the disciplined military man and the chaotic, unknown hippie element of the era. The story MacDonald told was one of desperate survival against an invading force. 4 figures, 3 men and 1 woman with blonde hair wearing boots, chanting "Acid is groovy, kill the pigs." He claimed to have fought them off before they fled. However, the military investigation conducted by the Army Criminal Investigation Division, CID, immediately began finding glaring inconsistencies that contradicted his testimony. The physical evidence: MacDonald, a trained Green Beret, received only minor cuts and bruises, yet his wife suffered 2 broken arms and was repeatedly stabbed with a paring knife and an ice pick. 5-year-old Kimberly was beaten and stabbed, and 2-year-old Kristen was stabbed over 30 times. The sheer number of wounds
suggested an intimate, frenzied violence that didn't align with a quick attack by outside robbers. MacDonald was initially charged by the Army, then the charges were dropped, and he was given an honorable discharge. This initial dismissal, fueled by the authority bias of the Army protecting its own, was short-lived. Following a relentless campaign by Colette's stepfather, the U.S. Justice Department took over the case. This led to a dramatic transformation, the civilian system challenging the military's initial findings. MacDonald was indicted in 1975, sparking a long, winding legal battle that went all the way to the Supreme Court over his Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial. This years-long legal maze kept the story alive for nearly a decade before the trial even began, creating a massive curiosity gap around the truth. The core narrative conflict remained. Was MacDonald a victim of a psychotic break? and a staged crime, or a cold-blooded killer silencing his family to maintain a perfect military image while pursuing a life free from domestic entanglement. The prosecution methodically dismantled the hippie killer story, demonstrating that key pieces of evidence from the scene, including a pajama top and hairs found near the bodies, could only be traced back to MacDonald himself. After a dramatic trial in 1979, which included the unforgettable, heartbreaking testimony of Colette's stepfather, MacDonald was tried and convicted of all 3 murders. He was sentenced to life in prison. The fallout continues to this day. MacDonald remains in prison, still fiercely claiming his innocence, backed by a dedicated group of supporters and legal advocates who point to flaws in the original military investigation and the possibility of a botched crime scene. His case, immortalized in the book and film Fatal Vision, is a benchmark for legal appeals and a stark reminder of the danger of unchecked power within a closed, hierarchical system like the military. The constant claims and counterclaims ensure the Zygarnik loop of his guilt is never truly closed. What does this decades-long legal battle say about the price of truth and justice in America? MacDonald's case ended in a legal labyrinth spanning decades, defined by his refusal to accept guilt. But sometimes the destruction of the family is motivated not by infidelity or a staged alibi, but by a need to preserve status, a fear of losing one's standing in a tight-knit community when deep, embarrassing secrets surface. Our next subject was a respected school official who decided that losing his reputation was a worse fate than ending the lives of his wife and 3 sons. Next, we travel to Ireland to uncover the chilling, controlling world of Alan Hawe. The truth revealed in his final note is horrifying. What secret was so awful that it was worth sacrificing 4 innocent lives? Number 2. Alan Hawe, the pillar who fell. The date: August 28, 2016. The target: wife Colette, 39, and sons Liam, 13, Niall, 11, and Ryan, 6. The conspirator: Alan Hawe, the deputy principal. The location: Ballyghamesduff, County Cavan, Ireland. In the quiet rural community near Ballyghamesduff, County Cavan, Ireland, Alan Hawe was a respected figure, the deputy principal of Castleran National School, a man known for his calm demeanor and dedication to his community. He and his wife, Colette, also a popular teacher, were seen as pillars of stability. In August 2016, this perfect image was violently incinerated. Hawe first killed Colette downstairs, putting a knife through her throat. He then went upstairs and killed his 3 sons, who were found dead in their beds, having been strangled and stabbed. The sheer force of the violence suggested a massive, desperate outpouring of rage far beyond the quiet despair initially speculated. The conflict that fueled this final horrific event was Hawe's obsession with his status and reputation. Recent investigations and inquest testimony revealed the deep controlling nature of his marriage, including the fact that he was monitoring his wife's email and texts. The deeper rot which Hawe feared losing his reputation over was exposed after his death. He was seeing a therapist and had confessed that he feared losing his position, weeping while saying, "If only they knew." The most damning piece of evidence was Hawe's suicide note. It was found in the home and provided the chilling answer. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness or a sign of depression over his family's fate. It was a desperate statement of his fear of impending exposure. He reportedly wrote that he was terrified of something blowing up when he returned to work after the summer break. This note provided immediate authority bias for the investigation. The motive was clear. Eliminating his family was preferable to the public shame he anticipated. Further reports revealed Hawe was secretly accessing illegal content, a secret that would have ruined his career and reputation instantly. The coroner's inquest later confirmed that Hawe had died by suicide after killing his entire family. The entire community was forced into a rapid transformation of their perception of the respected deputy principal. The narrative shifted from a shared tragedy to a calculated act of violence driven by patriarchal control. The fallout was immense, sparking a national conversation in Ireland about male domestic violence, the societal pressure on men to maintain a perfect public persona, and the concept of familicide as a final act of control. The case remains a stark lesson. Sometimes the man who appears to be the most composed,
the most respected, is harboring the most profound darkness, and his final act is a calculated, brutal attempt to silence the only people who truly know him. What truly defines a monster, the crime itself, or the cold, selfish calculation behind it? Alan Hawe's fear of losing status led to the annihilation of his future. But our next case involves a father whose motive was far more shocking, a desire to destroy an entire family unit to hide a taboo relationship. This subject murdered his own daughter, her grandson, and her adoptive father in a twisted, incestuous dynamic that ended in a shocking multi-state manhunt. Next, we examined the truly horrifying case of Steven Pladl, where the ultimate family bond was weaponized into murder. This is one family secret that simply could not be contained.
Number 1. Steven Pladl, the Incestuous Annihilation. The date, April 11th, 12th, 2018. The target, biological daughter, Katie Rose Fusco, 20 years, adoptive father, Anthony Fusco, 56 years, and infant son, Bennett, 7 months old. The conspirator, Steven Pladl. The location, Knightdale, North Carolina / New Milford, Connecticut, USA. The story of Steven Pladl is a rare and agonizing glimpse into a darkness that is almost impossible to comprehend. A father who murdered his own daughter, his grandson, who was also his son, and his daughter's adoptive father to escape the legal and social consequences of a long-term, incestuous relationship. This was not a domestic tragedy. It was a systematic, two-state purge designed to eliminate all witnesses to his profound moral transgression. The conflict was the inevitable collision between Pladl's obsessive, years-long relationship with his biological daughter, Katie Rose Fusco, and the legal system that had finally charged them both with incest in January 2018. The narrative began to unravel in North Carolina. After being released on bond and with Katie still in custody awaiting trial, Pladl faced the reality of losing both his daughter and their infant child. On the evening of April 11th, 2018, Pladl murdered his 7-month-old infant son Bennett Kyron Pladl, who was simultaneously his child and his grandson, by smothering him in his Knightdale home and hiding the infant's body in a closet. This calculated act was the first step in his final murderous plan: eliminate the evidence of his crime. Then, the true act of targeted vengeance began. Knowing he faced a life sentence for the incestuous relationship, Pladl executed the second phase. He drove north, across state lines, locating Katie and her adoptive father, Anthony Fusco, a retired corrections officer, in Connecticut. They were on a pre-arranged legal trip. At a stop sign in New Milford, Pladl, armed with his Arrow AR-15 style rifle, pulled up and opened fire, executing both Katie and Anthony inside their car. The authority bias initially focused on the victims of the car shooting, but the full horror was revealed by Pladl himself. He called his own mother, confessed to all the killings, and explicitly told her not to enter the house in Knightdale, but to call the police, effectively setting the stage for the police discovery of the infant. This chilling acceptance of responsibility before his final act was the definitive piece of evidence. The transformation of the narrative from a simple shooting to a premeditated triple homicide was completed when police discovered the body of the infant, Bennett, hidden in Pladl's North Carolina home. The sheer scope of the violence, the murder of his own grandchild/son, his daughter/lover, and her adoptive father indicated a complete moral and psychological collapse. Following the shootings, Pladl drove just 18 miles and committed suicide in his van in Dover, New York. The case serves as a grim study in how deeply rooted personal pathologies and a desire to avoid the social shaming and legal consequences can completely destroy the social contract inherent in family. The tragic deaths of all 3 victims, including an infant, were a direct consequence of a secret that could no longer be contained. Could the full extent of Steven Pladl's evil have been predicted by his decades-long manipulation of his family? Steven Pladl's annihilation was an act of extreme sexual pathology and self-preservation. But our final anchor case returns to the pure, toxic core of patrician greed and alleged abuse, the very nexus of entitlement and violence. This is the case that opened the national conversation on whether money or trauma was the true motive for familicide. Next, we turn to the affluent hills of Beverly Hills and the endless legal struggle of Lyle and Erik Menendez. Were they abused victims who snapped, or spoiled sons who killed for cash? The answer changes everything. Notable mention: Lyle and Erik Menendez, the price of freedom and fortune. The date: August 20th, 1989. The target: Father Jose Menendez and Mother Kitty Menendez. The conspirators: Lyle Menendez, 21, and Erik Menendez, 18 years old. The location: Beverly Hills, California, USA. The summer of 1989 in Beverly Hills was thick with the scent of affluence and the murmur of old money. The Menendez family appeared to be the epitome of the American dream realized: success, wealth, influence, and two seemingly promising young sons, Lyle and Erik, groomed for Ivy League futures. Jose Menendez was a high-powered executive in the entertainment industry, a self-made man who wielded absolute tyrannical control over his domain. Kitty, his seemingly refined wife, presided over their opulent home. But beneath the terracotta roof and behind the manicured lawns, the air was not of domestic bliss. It was suffocating, heavy with secrets and the corrosive acid of decades of unaddressed trauma. This was a house where silence was law, and obedience was the price of survival. The facade was perfect, but the reality, as later testimony would reveal, was a private, terrifying nightmare. The brothers had lived under a reign of control so absolute that they perceived only one escape route left available to them. They were not just sons, they were subjects in a tyranny ruled by a father whose ambition was matched only by his alleged capacity for sexual and psychological cruelty, and a mother whose alleged complicity sealed their fate. Official reports from the ensuing investigation painted two terrifyingly plausible pictures. The prosecution argued greed, pointing to Jose's vast fortune, estimated to be in the tens of millions of dollars, which the boys stood to inherit. Their theory: the boys were spoiled, resentful, and unwilling to wait. Their spending spree in the months following the murders, buying expensive cars, watches, and indulging a lavish lifestyle, was the perfect evidence for the negativity bias of a public eager to condemn spoiled rich kids. The defense, led by Leslie Abramson, argued cyclical trauma, relying on the boys' tearful testimony detailing years of alleged sexual abuse, emotional degradation, and constant threats of violence from Jose. They claimed they pulled the trigger not for the money, but because they genuinely feared their father would kill them if they ever exposed the truth. This use of authority bias, expert testimony on battered child syndrome, clashed violently with the prosecution's narrative. The plot itself was a chilling piece of logistical planning designed to look like an outside job, a professional hit meant to secure two things: freedom from their father and access to their fortune. On August 20th, 1989, Lyle and Erik armed themselves with shotguns, entered the den, and opened fire. The sheer violence of the attack, the multiple, savage shotgun blasts at close range, was intended to send a message that the assailants were professionals, ruthless, and efficient. The immediate aftermath was an exercise in performance art. The brothers drove to the coast to dispose of the weapons, established a false alibi at a local cinema, and then Lyle dialed 911. His voice a meticulously calibrated symphony of panic and distress. "Somebody killed my parents," he screamed, playing the role of the devastated survivor. The walls of secrecy, however, are rarely built strong enough to withstand the pressure of guilt. The true unraveling came from the most unexpected source: Erik,
consumed with guilt, sought counsel from a psychotherapist, Dr. L. Jerome Oziel. When Oziel's mistress eventually brought recordings of Erik's tearful confessions to the police, the illusion shattered. In March 1990, Lyle and Erik Menendez were arrested. The first set of trials ended in hung juries, a national stalemate that perfectly reflected the country's own inability to reconcile the two narratives. The transformation in the retrial, commencing in 1995 under a more restrictive judge, led to a different verdict. In March 1996, both brothers were convicted of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Yet the story is defined by its refusal to die. In May 2025, due to California's youth offender parole laws, Lyle and Erik were resentenced to 50 years to life, making them eligible for parole. In August 2025, their first bids for parole were denied by the parole commissioners. This final status update ensures the open loop continues. The Menendez saga is a profound study in the ambiguity of justice. Are they survivors or are they cold-blooded murderers? The legal system may have decided, but the public jury remains forever hung. This entire countdown has been a journey through the darkest corners of the human psyche, where the roles of protector and predator are violently inverted. We have witnessed acts fueled by greed and status, Bamber, Hawe, desperation and financial ruin, Pokhilko and O'Brien, patriarchal control, Haight and MacDonald, deceptive pathology, Routier and Smith, absolute evasion, Bishop, and the lethal consequences of hidden.
The enduring lesson from these 11 shattering betrayals is a mandate. We must look past the superficial performance. We must question the authority figures, acknowledge the reality of private torment, and understand that the most dangerous prison is the one built by the hands meant to offer safety. The silence following these events is not peace. It is the sound of broken trust, and the legacy we inherit is the duty to watch for the signs that domestic love has turned into domestic annihilation. Where in the world are you watching this from? And which of these 11 stories do you find the most terrifying in its sheer coldness? Let us know in the comments below. And if this deep dive into the architecture of domestic betrayal has informed you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next expose on the darkest secrets of the powerful.